Let's set the scene. The date is April 25th, 1915. Now, this is a day that, by all accounts, by every calculation you could possibly make, should have been the beginning of the end for the Ottoman Empire. But history, as we're about to see, isn't always written by the numbers. So, picture this. It's 4:30 in the morning. Out of the misty dawn on the Aegean Sea, this ghost fleet starts to appear. An absolute forest of steel warships from the Allied powers, and they begin to just unleash hell on the quiet shores of Gallipoli. This is it, the start of a massive, world-changing game. And just look at this number, 308. That's how many warships the Entente powers brought to the party. A force so overwhelming, so advanced, that victory didn't just seem likely, it felt like a mathematical certainty.
And that's the whole point, really. On paper, this fight was already over before it began. The Allied planners had done the math, the men, the ships, the guns. By every single metric, the road to Istanbul looked wide open.
Before we go any further, just a quick reminder, please remember to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and share and like my videos. All the information you're seeing is compiled from open sources. Thank you. Okay, now let's get back to that critical morning. So the entire Allied plan, it all depended on a fast, decisive landing, which means the entire defense of the peninsula depended on predicting where that landing would be. And right here, this is where we see the first crack in that statistical certainty. It's a clash between the official plan from high command and the gut feeling of one man on the ground. Now, this is what's so fascinating. On the left, you've got the official assessment from the German commander, Lieutenant von Sonders. He's convinced the main attack is coming at a more logical, predictable spot. But on the right, you have Lieutenant Colonel Mustafa Kemal. He sees something totally different. He predicts the Allies are going to make a bold, risky push for the high ground at Arbernu, the very spine of the peninsula. So, why was he so sure? Well, this wasn't some lucky guess. See, years before, during the Balkan Wars, Kemal had walked these exact hills. He had studied every ridge and every ravine. He didn't just see a map, he knew the ground intimately. He understood that whoever held that ridge held everything. And check out this timeline, because this is the moment a single officer decides to risk his entire career to save his country. At 5:30 a.m., the report comes in. The enemy is landing exactly where he said they would, but his orders are to stand by. He doesn't wait. He defies the entire chain of command and, on his own authority, mobilizes his entire division to meet the threat. A decision made in just a few minutes that would change the course of the 20th century. So Kemal literally races ahead of his own troops. But when he gets to a critical hilltop, he sees an absolute nightmare unfolding. His own soldiers, out of ammunition, are falling back in a panic. And right on their heels are the first Anzac troops, seconds away from taking the high ground and winning the day. I mean, just think about that for a second. This is the ultimate test, right? Your men are broken, they have nothing left to fight with, and the enemy is about to seal a decisive victory. What on earth do you do? His response is pure genius. He doesn't tell them to charge into a hopeless fight. He orders them to stop, fix their bayonets, and lie down. And think about what the advancing Anzacs saw. A line of men suddenly stopping, the sun glinting off steel. It looked like a perfectly laid trap. They paused, they took cover, totally convinced they had stumbled into an ambush. And just like that, the entire invasion's momentum ground to a halt on that slope. Those few seconds, those priceless minutes of hesitation, were all Kemal needed. It was just enough time for his main force, the legendary 57th Regiment, to get to the front and plug the gap. And as the 57th Regiment gets into position, he gives them one of the most chilling and yet profound commands in all of military history. He tells them, "I do not order you to attack. I order you to die. In the time it takes us to die, other troops and commanders can come and take our place." This was so much more than just an order. It was a complete psychological rewiring. He was flipping a switch in his soldiers' minds, taking them from a state of survival to what we could call ultimate resistance. A mindset where defending the nation becomes the only thing that matters, completely overriding the basic instinct to live. Okay, so with the line barely holding, Kemal's other great advantage now comes into play. He starts using the land itself as his primary weapon against an enemy that had him completely outgunned. You have to understand, the Allies were basically fighting blind. Their maps of this area were terrible, practically useless. But Kemal? From his time surveying the area, he had a perfect 1 to 25,000 scale map in his head. He knew every single hidden path, every blind spot, every concealed route.
And he used that knowledge with absolute brilliance. He channeled the Anzacs into these steep, exhausting ravines that just shattered their formations. At the same time, he moved his own men, and even his artillery, through hidden stream beds, totally shielded from the massive naval guns sitting just offshore. He basically used geography to neutralize the Allies' single greatest advantage.
And the men of the 57th Regiment, they followed their commander's order to the letter. They fought until the regiment was almost completely wiped out, but they never gave up that high ground. Their incredible sacrifice stopped the advance, saved the entire defensive line, and became a foundational story for the modern Turkish nation. In fact, out of profound respect, the 57th Regiment has never been officially recreated in the army. When you look back, the events of that single morning did so much more than just win one battle. They created a legend that would shape the entire future of a nation.
You know, there's this quote, often attributed to Winston Churchill, who was the architect of the whole Gallipoli campaign. It says it all, really. They had the numbers, the ships, the plans, but they couldn't calculate the impact of one determined commander who knew the ground better than they knew their own maps.
And that's why this day is so important. That spirit of defiance, of taking initiative when no one else will, of turning your weakness into a strength, that became the blueprint for the Turkish War of Independence, which Kemal would go on to lead, building a new republic from the ashes of an empire.
In the end, the sun that rose over Gallipoli that morning, it wasn't just lighting up a battlefield. It was lighting up a new belief. A belief that even when every statistic in the world says you're beaten, true leadership and knowing the ground beneath your feet can change the course of history itself.